few weeks ago, I was digging through old training logs from Soviet-era sports academies, and something didn't add up. These guys had almost none of what we consider essential today. No whey isolate, no creatine tubs, no supplement stacks. And yet, pound for pound, some of these wrestlers were putting up strength numbers that would embarrass half the gym bros on Instagram. So naturally, I got curious. What were they actually eating? Turns out training was maybe 20% of the equation. The other 80% was sitting on a kitchen table, and most of it cost less than a bus ticket. And when I actually laid out what showed up on their plates, it was almost embarrassingly simple. We're talking about a cured pork fat that everyone's scared of today, a soup made from beets that cost pennies, a soft cheese most Americans have never touched, and a fermented drink you could buy on literally every street corner. No powders, no pills, no $80 bottles with a shirtless guy on the label. So let's go through them one at a time, starting with the cheapest one, because it's honestly kind of hilarious. Food One sunflower oil and black bread. Bread and oil sound like the opposite of a muscle food, right? But here's the thing most people miss. Back then, a loaf of rye bread cost around 16 kopecks. That's less than a nickel, and it wasn't just filler. Whole rye bread is dense in B vitamins, particularly B6, which your body needs to actually convert food into usable energy for training. No B6, no efficient metabolism, no recovery. Combine that with a spoon of unrefined sunflower oil rich in vitamin E and linoleic acid, and you've basically got a cheap anti-inflammatory combo that helps joints recover between sessions. Today, you'd pay $6 for a bottle of cold-pressed oil at Whole Foods and call it biohacking. Back then, it was just what was on the table. But that's not surprising. The one that actually made me stop and double-check my sources was lard. Food 2 lard, Salo. Yes, pork fat. Salo, as it's called there, is basically a slab of cured pig fat. And it was everywhere in Soviet kitchens, not as a garnish, as a staple. Now before you close the tab, hear me out. Everyone panics the second they hear saturated fat. But your body doesn't build testosterone out of thin air. Cholesterol is the actual raw material your Leydig cells use to manufacture testosterone. Picture a factory that makes cars cut the steel supply, and it doesn't matter how good your workers are, output drops. The same logic applies here. Multiple studies on low-fat diets show measurable testosterone drops, some in the range of 10 to 15%, and that's without going anywhere near extreme. Salo isn't a healthy food by modern standards, but in a calorie-scarce economy, it was an efficient way to keep the hormonal factory supplied. A kilogram back then ran about 1.5 to 2 rubles. Today, a pound of good cured pork fat from a butcher will run you anywhere from $8 to $12. That's one food most people would never guess. The next one honestly surprised me even more. Food 3, beet and cabbage soup, borscht. On paper, it's just vegetable soup, but look closer, and there's a reason it showed up on tables constantly, especially in winter. Cabbage, specifically fermented cabbage, was doing quite heavy lifting here. Fermented foods carry live cultures that support gut health, and here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. Your gut microbiome plays a real role in hormone regulation, including how efficiently your body clears excess estrogen. A gut that's inflamed or imbalanced can actually work against your testosterone levels, not just your digestion. Beets, meanwhile, are one of the richest natural sources of nitrates, which convert to nitric oxide in your bloodstream. More nitric oxide means better blood flow, which means more nutrients actually reaching your muscles during a lift, instead of just floating around in your bloodstream doing nothing. A pot of borscht cost next to nothing, maybe 20 to 30 kopecks worth of ingredients for a family-sized batch. You'd struggle to find a performance beet juice supplement today for under $30. Alright, but we still haven't touched real protein, and that's where things get interesting. Food, 4 cottage cheese and egg yolks, tvorog. The name of the food is tvorog, and yes, I already covered this exact word in a previous breakdown, so if that sounds familiar, good, you were paying attention. But here's a detail I left out last time. how they combined it. Wrestlers would often eat Tvirog alongside raw egg yolks, not the whites of the yolks specifically, and that's not random. Egg yolks are one of the few natural food sources of vitamin D that also happens to double as a hormone precursor. Vitamin D deficiency has been linked in multiple studies to lower testosterone, and correcting a deficiency has been shown to bring levels back up meaningfully. Combine that with the slow-digesting casein from the Tvirog, and you've got a pairing that feeds muscle repair for hours while also covering a micronutrient gap that most modern diets ironically still don't fix. A dozen eggs back then cost around 90 kopecks. Cheap then, and honestly, still one of the cheapest protein sources on the planet now. Now here's the part people usually get wrong. It's easy to think, just eat lard and bread and you'll be jacked. The real pattern is that these foods were missing processed sugar, seed oils, and constant caloric surplus from junk. Their diet wasn't optimized in a lab. It was optimized by scarcity. When garbage food barely exists, you end up eating things your hormones respond well to, almost by accident. And speaking of what your body responds to, your finger responds well to hitting that subscribe button, so give it a workout too. Let's talk about the daily structure, because the pattern mattered as much as the food itself. Breakfast, zavtrak, was almost always something hot kasha, maybe with a bit of butter, sometimes eggs. Lunch, obed, was the main event of the day, typically eaten in the early afternoon, and it was the heaviest meal soup, a main dish, usually some kind of grain. Dinner, uzin, was deliberately light, often just tvorog or a simple dairy dish, eaten a few hours before bed. That last detail matters more than it looks. Eating your heaviest meal midday and your lightest meal at night lines up almost perfectly with what modern circadian rhythm research suggests about insulin sensitivity. There's one more piece worth mentioning: kvass, the fermented rye drink you'd find on nearly every street corner in summer. It's mildly alcoholic, slightly sweet, and it's essentially a byproduct of the same fermentation process that makes sourdough bread work. I want to be upfront here. There's no strong study directly linking kvass to testosterone, but what it does provide is a source of B vitamins and some probiotic activity, on top of just being a hydrating alternative to sugary soda in the middle of a hot training day. Sometimes a food's value isn't a dramatic hormone spike, it's just not working against you the way modern alternatives do. So if you zoom out, the through line across everything here, the lard, the borscht, the Tvirog and eggs, the timing of meals isn't some secret ancient formula. It's the absence of modern nutritional noise. No ultra-processed snacks competing for stomach space. No sugar spikes crashing energy right before training. No constant grazing disrupting digestion. Just dense, mostly whole foods, eaten on a consistent schedule, dictated by what was actually available. They didn't have the science to explain why any of this worked. They just knew that simple, unprocessed food, eaten on a schedule, kept them strong through decades of scarcity that would have broken a less resilient diet. If there's a Soviet-era food or habit I missed, drop it in the comments. I'm sure there's more buried in these old records. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.